crafty friends, Kim from StampingImperfection.com. I'm glad you're joining me today. I'm creating a card from the new Create and Inkspire craft kit, and this is a nice fun fall card. I'm using a piece of the white cardstock that was in the kit. I cut it down to 5.5 by 8.5 and I scored it at 4.25, and I cut down this piece of craft cardstock to 4 by 5.25. I'm just adding some double-sided sticky tape to the back of it. I'm going to attach this to the front, leaving a little white border all around. I was excited to see this craft cardstock. I haven't used this enough lately, and it's so perfect for fall. When I first got this kit had a lot of stuff in it. It's got a lot of beautiful metallic specialty paper in it, and I was excited to see that paper. But when I looked at this stamp set, this big stamp set, I was like, wow, these are giant images. I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. And then I decided, well, I'll just create a card. So I'm using this week's Atlantic Hearts Sketch Challenge to do this layout. And I decided that I love the way the watermarked images look on craft cardstock. So I pulled out the 3 leaves and I kind of arranged them using a clear block, and then I just started inking them up with Versamark, and I just turned my clear block so that I could kind of piece them together and create a little background. I wanted a subtle background because the card sketch is a pretty clean and simple card sketch, but I just wanted something on that craft cardstock, and I love this watermark look using Versamark. It's one of the things I really like about Versamark. Isn't that fun? So I've got a background, but it's subtle. It isn't going to overwhelm the layout of the card. And you can see some of the other things in this card kit here. There's a great layered stencil there, but all I need is that little tiny rectangle. And I think that's cut about 2.5 by 3. So I just started like layering together my stamps, and I decided I would create a little scene with some of these fruits and vegetables here. So the kit actually came with a piece of masking paper, so I was excited about that. So I know I want that pumpkin to be in the front, so I stamped the pumpkin and I overlapped it so it kind of goes off that little square. That's the only place my image is going to be. That's actually a rectangle. And then I stamped it with whatever ink was left on it onto the masking paper, and I'm just going to fussy cut that out. So I'll fussy cut all my images. Most of them probably not as fussy as I'm going to be with this. I don't know why I'm being so fussy with the side of this I don't need, but I generally try to save my mess, although I wasn't able to in this case. So I cut that out, and then I just lay that on top. And I try to cut a little inside the inked outline when I do the mask, because when I overlap them, I don't want a gap between them if I can avoid it. So the next thing I do is I decide I want those grapes to go on top, and I'm going to cut out another mask for those. So I'll just go around all of these, and I only really need to do this one side, so I won't do the whole other side here. I'll just kind of cut it so because that's really going to overlap the pumpkin, and I'm not going to put anything to the left of those grapes, so I don't need to be really fussy about how I cut that out. Now, one of those pieces of masking paper, like usually you'll buy a package of like 10 or whatever, and usually those will last for a long time because I am very frugal with them. So like this one piece of masking paper is going to get me a lot of cards. So now I put the ear of corn down, and I'm really just enjoying layering these together. I love making scenes. If you have not tried making a scene and layering things together like this, definitely try it. Notice that I put the pumpkin down first. I want that pumpkin to appear that it is in front of all of the other things. So I stamped that first, then I put the mask down, then I did the grapes because I want the grapes to look like they're behind that pumpkin. And then I masked the grapes and then stamped the corn, and now I'm cutting out a mask for the corn. because I want the corn to appear behind the grapes. So, you start with what you want to appear to be in front, and then you just build from there. So everything, as you put more and more things on, those are the things that are going to look like they're behind the other things. So I had a little trouble getting the mask off because I have no fingernails, and I do too much mixed media to have fingernails. Seriously, they just will get dirty. So I want to put the apple and the pear on there. I just can't quite decide how I want to arrange them. So I decide I'm going to put the apple, and it isn't going to go on the bottom, it's going to go on the top. And I thought maybe I could get away with stamping both of them at the same time, but I can't. So I'll put the apple down, and then I'll go ahead and I'll stamp that pear, and I don't need to mask the apple because the pear isn't going to overlap it in any way. And so I'm going to put that pear a little off the page, and I'm careful to clean up my mat because too many times I've smeared a project because I forgot to clean up my mat when I stamped off a paper like that. So you do want to be careful. So I'm looking at these sentiments. I love the sentiments, but they're huge. And I did not keep this in mind when I was laying out the card. I probably could have used one of these sentiments on this card if I had laid the whole thing out just a little bit differently. This is like my masking paper must be fairly old because it does not stick as well as this does. I don't know what brand this is from the kit, but mine doesn't stick like this. I had a lot of trouble getting this off. I use the Inkadinka masking paper, and it comes off pretty easily. So this was the first time I ever had it. Like, I just assumed this was Inkadinka because it looks exactly the same, but this was super sticky masking paper. And sometimes you want that. If you're going to do a lot of ink blending, you want it to be pretty sticky. So now I'm just pulling out a bunch of markers. I'm pulling out my favorite greens, my favorite reds. I have some favorite oranges. Like, I'm going to pull all of those out. Like, I have combinations that I love for pumpkins. I have combinations that I love for green things. And I have a favorite red combination. I don't have a favorite corn combination, and I don't have a favorite grape combination. I also don't really know what color to make that pear since I don't really eat the pears. And so I'm, pulling out a bunch of things. I pull out my favorite dark green, which is G29. So I'm just pulling out a bunch of markers. It's nice to actually, when you get to the point with your alcohol markers, whatever brand you use, that you are really comfortable pulling out different color combinations for specific things. So for the grapes, I decided to go with BV17. That's a dark color. And I'm going to keep my dark colors on the right-hand side and the bottom. I will tuck a little bit of that darker purple underneath the grapes above it so that I give it a shadow. Then I pulled out V15. I meant to pull out BVs, but I pulled out V15 instead of BV15. So this was a happy accident because it kind of gave it almost a reddish pink color in the center, and I really liked the way that came out. So now I'm just going to fill in the rest of that with the BV11. So it goes from dark to light from the right to the left, and I've got this really interesting almost reddish purple color in the center like real grapes might have. So I'm taking my E44 and I'm just putting that along all of the stems of the fruits. And then I'm going to use E43 and just fill in the rest of it. Like the smaller ones, there's really not a lot of room to put the E43. And if you like to have more colors, you put more colors on, definitely. So I'm going to use that G29. I love this color. It's so pretty. So I'm using the G29 for the right-hand side. And then I pulled out G85 because I kind of wanted a little bit of yellowy green there, but I still wanted to keep it dark, and I actually liked that combination. I had not put those two colors together before. Now the red, to me, this is a no-brainer. This is my all-time favorite red combination. I like to start with R59. That gives me that really deep dark shadow where I want it, and you can see I'm really putting a lot of that down on the right hand side where I want it to look darker and more shadowed. And then I'm taking my R27 and I go over the edge of that R59 and fill in a bit more, and then I'll pull out R24 and go over the R27 a little bit. These blend nicely. And then I'm going to pull out R30 because my R20 is dead. And I just missed my R20. I didn't like the way that looked, so I covered that a little bit more with the R24. So I need to get a refill for my R20. So now I'm going to try some yellows for that corn, and I really like that light yellow white corn. I forget what it's called. It's very sweet corn though. So I used Y00 and I wanted a darker Y on the outside. So I pulled out my Y35 and put that down the sides. Now, one of my lines on the leaf, one of the leaves of one of the sides of the corn cob, actually that's Y15. I put that down the right and left side and left the center pretty light, because I felt like maybe it will look more curved if I do that. I didn't want to do individual corn kernels. That's just crazy. So I didn't do that. So that was Y00 and Y15. Now this is my favorite green combination. This is YG67. And I'm going to put that where I think it's going to be a little bit darker. I'm looking at the picture of that corn cob there because I wasn't quite sure whether those were like one on one side or whether there were two there. And I just decided to go with it and make it darker where I wanted to. Now I'm going to go in with my YG63 and just go over the 67, and then I'll fill it in with the 61. I love this combo. It's my favorite grass combo, but I just think it's just a pretty color combination. You get that lightness, but I am going to add a little bit more dark because I thought I blended out my Y67 a little bit too much, so I'm adding a little bit more of that because I really do want there to be a lot of shadow and a deeper color along those edges there. So for the pear, I decided to go with some YGs, and I'm starting with YG03, which is pretty green. And then I used YG01, which is still pretty green, and then I used YG0000, YG 4 zeros, and filled in the rest. And I actually liked the way that pear came out. My husband said he prefers green pears, so that's what I used. So for my pumpkin, my favorite color combination starts with YR18, and I'm just going to pull that YR18 through where I want it to be the darkest. And then I'm going to pull out YR14 and go over each of those spots and pull it a little bit farther, just flick it a little bit farther into the pumpkin, widening each one of those and flicking a little at the bottom. And I just like this combination a lot. And then I have YR12, and I'm doing the same thing, going over what I did and just widening it a little bit, still leaving some white space there, but putting a lot of this lighter yellowish or orangey red in. And then I'm filling it in with Y35. I feel like this yellow really brightens it up a lot, and it blends those different orange colors together nicely. And I have to say, I'm wishing that I'd taken the darker color and gone back over the darker spots there. I think that would have looked nice. Up close, you can see the depth of the color, but here you can't. I don't think you can see the dark spots as much as I'd like you to be able to. So I'm pulling out some of my warm grays. So I'm using WG3 here, and I'm just filling in where underneath the underneath the pumpkin and the corn and everything. And then I used YG1, and then I'm using BG0000, BG with 4 zeros. It's a pretty light blue color. I think it's perfect for skies, and I'm just filling in the sky part of it. And I did get between the corn cob and the pumpkin because there's a little bit of space there. I don't want to leave that white. So I'm being careful as I go around, because that black ink I used the Alta New Obsidian, and I always forget to hit it with the heat gun, but it does run, surprisingly. You need to really let that dry for quite a while, or really hit it with your heat gun, your heat tool. So I decided I wanted a little texture on the ground part. So I went back with my WG3, WG1, and WG0, and I added some dots. So I stippled it a little bit so it would look like a textured ground. Now I'm cutting down a piece of cherry red, and I love this color of red cardstock. Love it. And I just cut it 1/8 inch longer than that panel I just colored, and 1/8 inch wider. So I'm going to have a very subtle red band around the outside, but I just love the way that looks. A dark navy blue looks really nice also. Even a dark brown would look nice, I think. And actually probably any color, orange, whatever. This is just a piece of scrap orange that I had. The sketch called for a strip below, so I brought the orange in. I like orange and red together. They're nice analogous colors on the color wheel, so this seemed like a good plan. So this is an element from the sketch. I might not have put something like this in if I wasn't using that sketch, but I actually like it there. So I'm going to place this on top of that orange strip, and then it's time to add a sentiment. Now technically on the card sketch, the sentiment was actually supposed to be on that little panel that I just colored, but I spent so much time coloring the fruit, and I liked the way everything turned out. I didn't want to put a sentiment over it. And I like the sentiments a lot on this this stamp set, but they're huge, absolutely huge. And had I made a plan to use one of them, I might have moved that piece that I colored up a little bit. And the sketch also calls for a strip to go over the top of that, a little thin strip to go over the top of that panel, but I thought maybe I could do that with the sentiment, but I didn't love it. So I pulled out one of my Sunny Studios stamp sets. This is one of my favorite fall stamp sets. I have a couple of Sunny Studio stamp sets that I've had for a couple of years. I think this is from like 2018, maybe even earlier. But I love this Grateful for You, and it's a good size. So I love that it's got some script and it's got some print on it. And you can see there's Falling for You, and then it's got a thank you sentiment. That's a pretty fantastic fall set there, by the way. And so I stamped that in black, and it didn't completely cover, and I didn't want to take a chance that restamping over the top of it, because sometimes you don't line it up completely, the paper moved a little bit. So I pulled out my Alta New black marker and just filled it in a little bit with the bullet tip, and I just filled in the pieces. Now I'm going to take a piece of black twine. Like literally this little scrappy piece of black twine was sitting on my desk. I thought I might try maybe the brown, but I decided I really did like the black better. And especially since I used the black ink to stamp all my images, and I used the black ink for the sentiment. So I'm just making a little bow, and I'm going to stick it on there with a glue dot. Now, that's going to actually finish off my card. I added a few little sequins in an autumn color mix just to finish it off, and you can see some nice close-up views of the card here. So you can check out more details on my blog at StampingImperfection.com. Please give this video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe while you're here and click that bell to get notifications every time I upload a video. And make sure you stop by my blog and sign up for my newsletter at StampingImperfection.com. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day, friends.